Hi everybody, welcome to UTech. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to set up a DHCP server using Windows 2008 R2. For this lab I'm going to be using VirtualBox. So I'm logged into my server, DHCP server. Go to command prompt and I'm going to run host name just to check if this is the correct server. So it's lab underscore DHCP underscore 01. Alright, that's the correct server. So before we start this, there's two things that you guys need to remember when you do a DHCP server. The first one is this server has to be part or a member of a domain, so he has to be on a domain. Second one is it has to have a static IP address. You don't want to do this with a DHCP. Alright, so let's get started. So I'll go to server manager, role, add role, DHCP server, next. So alright, so I got an IP address 192.168.1.45. This is a static IP address for my DHCP server I enter, and it's using IPv4. So next. Okay, so this is my domain, home.net, and my DNS server is 192.168.1.6. That's correct. So I go next. This is basically saying, do I want to use Win? Do I want to create a Win server for this? I'm just gonna go no, just leave it as defaults. Okay, so this is saying, do I want to add the scope for my IP address? How many IP address? What's the range it's gonna be for my DHCP? So you could do a yes or no, but I'm just gonna go add. And then what's the name of the scope? For this, we're gonna call it lab underscore network. And what's the IP range? It's going to be, so we're gonna go 192.168.1.100. What's going to be the end IP? So we're going to go 192.168.1.120. So it's going to have 20 IP addresses. So this is subnet type. It's going to be wired, and say this option is going to say how long do you want your IP address to be leased out. So if I have a Windows 7 computer and I log on and I get IP address from this scope, how long do I want that computer to have the IP address for? For 8 days. I'll teach you a way where you can set it up from different ways. So the subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255. I could change this if I was going to do supernet, or if I was going to break default gateway. This is optional. You really don't need to do this, but you could if you want to have accept your DHCP server on a different network. We're just going to go OK. Next. Just go next. You don't need this. Next. Okay, so here it's gonna say, do you want to use your credential for this workstation, or do you want to use your credential from your domain controller? So I could just go domain controller or skip this. I'll just go default, use current credentials. So here it gives you the outline of all the stuff I set up. So I just go install. This usually takes a minute or two. So I'll get this error, but don't worry about it, just go close. I'm getting this error because I installed the service, but I haven't enabled the service. So I'll just close this, go to administrator tool, DHCP server, get this full screen. I could have multiple. This is where I could go right click on the add a server. If I have a different DHCP server someplace else, I could add that server and then also configure from this tool. I could use Windows 2008 R2 core to enable DHCP role, and then I could open it here, and then you could do multiple things. But for this, we're gonna be using this. It's called lab DHCP 01. So you go next, IPv4. So if I click on that address pool, so here's the address pool we created before. The IP is gonna start from .100 to .20. Address lease. There's no server using this IP, but whatever. If I had a Windows 7 computer that's gonna be leasing this IP, it's gonna show you what computer and the name of the computer and client IP, what IP it's gonna be losing. Scope options. Right here, I could set up different DNS option, but we don't need to. And then I could do filtering, what MAC addresses to allow to use this IP or not. So say if I have there's 3 computers that I don't want them to get DHCP from this, but I could just go here, create a new filter, and say that enter a MAC address and description. So I'll say that MAC address doesn't get an IP from this DHCP, but it'll get it from this one, different IP, different DHCP server. So same thing right here, deny. I'll deny them allowed. Same thing, that I'll have all these servers. Say if I have like one server that it has to get the IP address from this DHCP, so I could type the MAC address in here, new filter, and then write that this has to get from here description, and then that server will only get the IP from this range. That's really cool. And then I could set up IPv6. You just go right click, new scope, next. Name of the scope go, I'll just call it net IP6. Next. This is just what's the scope going to be. It's a 64-bit, but I'll show that in a different video. So you do have, this is it. This is how you set up a DHCP server. It's really easy. And if I go to this, my scope, my DHCP scope, go to advanced, split scope. So here I could have, say I have 2 DHCP servers. I could add the second DHCP server, and I could split the IPs between them. So if one server would have a certain amount of IP and the other one would have certain amount of IP. So it'll have 100 from 100 to 110 on one, and then from 111 to 120 on one. So if one of the DHCP server goes offline, I still have the other IPs available. So that's a really cool feature built into 2008 R2. And if I go here, if I go to property, okay, in general scope, this is my IP information. Least during, remember I told you that you could control how many days you want to let the IP least. So remember, by default it's 8 days, but you could change it to whatever you want. This just tells you that that's server or that workstation you have, which is leasing an IP from this network, has to renew the IP every 8 days or 5 days, just whatever, depends on you. This is saying DNS is enabled. Next access, we don't need to do none of this scope. I'll show this in a different. It is DHCP, so just cancel that. Okay, thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it.